compassion fatigue real? If not, what are you experiencing when you're burning out emotionally, and what should you do when your give a damn is busted?
I don't know.
I do. Buckle up. Mended light. Friends, for years I've described what I experience after a long week of therapy or a long week of parenting or just a long week of life as compassion fatigue, especially with my kids. Like, our son trips, falls, bangs into things at least once an hour. It feels like it is several times a day.
We have a lot of baby giraffes at home.
Yeah.
Human baby giraffes that are learning to walk, even though they've been walking for years.
They slip, they stumble, they fall, they bang into things. They crash into each other, they conk heads. And there's 4 of them at home. So when you compound all of their experiences, at a certain point in the day as a parent, you're just kind of like, another kid has come to me crying.
Yeah.
And
15 plus years in, 17 plus years in, we're like, oh wow, that's it's real rough. I'm super sorry. You didn't learn to walk yet.
And they get all offended that you're not like, are you okay? Oh, I'm so sorry, and wiping their tears away. And listen, I'm not saying that they don't deserve that level of compassion. I'm just saying at a certain point, I know I've seen you do this, and I've done this. They come in for a hug, and you're just like, there. Right?
There.
And in therapy, you know who I put at the end of my work week.
Yeah. Just the people where you just need to sit there and listen. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
The talkers. They don't need a lot from me in terms of my mental or emotional energy. They just need to be heard. Why? Because by the end of my work week, I'm spent. And I always thought that was compassion fatigue. But there's new research that suggests that's not what that is. It's called empathic distress. In fact, compassion is how you resolve empathic distress. So what you're experiencing is not compassion fatigue when your give a damn is busted. I want to refer you all to an article by the National Library of Medicine called Compassion Does Not Fatigue.
Okay, so if you're a thinker, that's where to get your resource from.
Yeah.
And if you're not a thinker, just enjoy this video.
Just enjoy this video because we'll make it fun. Yay!
This is gonna be fun!
There are actually neurological differences between empathy and compassion. And the simplest way to describe it is that compassion is, yes, you have sympathy for what another person's going through.
Right.
But it's warm and it's positive and it's proactive.
Okay.
Whereas empathy, you're more prone to feel what the other person is feeling. And often one precedes the other. So for example, if you're sad and you're cold,
Right.
and I feel compassion for you,
Yeah.
then I want to hear what's going on with you, and I'm going to bring you a blanket,
Right.
and I'm going to bring you some hot tea,
Right.
and you can cry on my shoulder, right? And all the while, what you're getting from me is a lot of warmth, and you feel nurtured. And I don't really burn out from doing that.
Right.
Whereas with empathy, I'm feeling a lot of what the other person is feeling. I may be even more prone to confuse their pain with my pain. And I feel a lot of empathy when parents lose children. I've never lost a child. We haven't had any of our children die. But for some reason, like, that hits me on such a core gut punch level.
Yeah.
And this is why when people say, if it has to do with children suffering, they're like, I can't watch this, I can't read about this, I can't know about this. It's too much.
Yeah. Because they don't feel compassion, they feel empathy or empathic, and they feel those emotions.
And it's too much and it's too overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are limits to our empathy. There aren't really limits to our compassion by this definition. This is why, by the way, I have utmost respect and love for people who go into child trauma work, and I know that needs to be done. I don't have what it takes for it. I would take my work home with me, and it would weigh on me all the time. When you are feeling burnout, like you just don't care, like you don't have sympathy or empathy anymore, it's because your feelings are merging with the feelings of the person that is with you. You're feeling, if not exactly what they're feeling, it's rubbing off, right?
So would you say that's like an unhealthy codependence?
It's important to recognize when the research separates empathy and compassion, that empathy is not a negative.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of times empathy is a stepping stone to compassion.
Yeah.
But curiously, by this definition, it's not where you want to land.
Yeah. You don't want to stay stuck in empathy.
Yes.
Regardless of the situation.
If you come to me and I don't feel some sort of pang of
Right.
of empathy for what you're going through,
Or understanding. Yeah.
or putting myself in your shoes, then I may not be moved to help or to be there for you.
Right.
So in that sense, empathy is a very beautiful thing.
So it's a step on the path. It's not the destination. It's not even somewhere to take a pit stop. We want to move through empathy.
Well, you can stay in empathy for as long as it serves you and the other person. But I look at it like if you're playing this may not be the best analogy, but here we go. If you're playing Street Fighter, remember that old game Street Fighter?
I do.
And you only have like so much life bars, and if
Right,
you take enough
right.
hits, then you run out.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to get in the red.
Okay. So don't stay in empathy so long that it depletes you,
Exactly.
so that you can't then give compassion.
In fact, I would say you need to stay in empathy for a while and take some hits. So for a great example of this for me is I watched the film Schindler's List. And Schindler's List so realistically and heartbreakingly takes you into the inhumanity of the Holocaust.
Right.
In the context of day-to-day life, it's almost unbearable to go from just what's going on in your life to what was
The
happening
reality
then,
of
right?
World War II. Yeah.
Right. And it emotionally, I felt such empathy for the people that lived then, and then by extension, people who live now and the things that they're suffering that are similar, that it's overwhelming. If I stay there, then I stay in this place of hopelessness. In fact, if we're going to talk about Schindler's List, I think Schindler's List does a great job of taking the audience from empathy to compassion, because it moves you from how horrible this is and to join with these people in their suffering, and then you follow Schindler as he does something about it.
Yeah.
Stern!
Herr Director, my apologies.
Stop the train!
I apologize.
Here! Stop the train!
Stop the train!
And so if I understand what you're saying about empathy and compassion, empathy is the place which we feel for the other person, but it's not the place where we take action to
Yeah.
comfort or console or to support.
It's not necessarily the place where we take helpful action. Let me
Okay.
give you an example.
Okay.
I'm crossing the street. I get hit by a car. I'm bleeding. I'm dying. I need help. The paramedic arrives at the scene, and I'm panicked and I'm in distress. And the paramedic starts panicking too.
Because you're panicking.
Because
Yeah.
I'm panicking and my fear becomes their fear. That's an example of I don't need empathy.
Yeah.
I need compassion. I want that paramedic to hold. If there's two of them, like I want one of them to hold my hand and say, "We're here for you. It's going to be okay. Here's what we're doing to help you. Here's what we're doing to stabilize you while the others are working on me," and they're doing their job. And I don't want them so detached that whether I live or die doesn't matter to them.
Right.
And I don't
That's a
want
good
them so
example.
detached that they're not mindful of my pain. Because if they can do something to help my pain, I want them to do it. I want them emotionally invested. But if they're experiencing a lot of empathy, then they're going to be like, "This is horrifying. This is a nightmare." And then
It's debilitating, and
Yeah.
it's not actually supportive.
and you've experienced this when you're panicking and you want someone in your life to be there for you, and they don't actually help because all they do is like
Join you in
match,
panic.
yeah, or in your grief or in your stress. Now there are times when someone matching you with that level of empathy is exactly what you need, right?
Right.
For example, when my mom passed away, holding my sister as she cried and I cried and we were going through the exact same thing, we had empathy for each other, and it was beautiful and it was healing. And so I'm not saying empathy is bad. What I am saying is know what is needed in the situation.
Being aware of the differences and the purpose the two differences serve.
Yeah.
And being mindful of like, okay, what's going to support the situation, what's going to support the other person.
Yeah.
And there are individuals who are grieving or going through a hard thing, and it's like, no, I want my partner to meet me there
Yes.
with empathy, right? So it's also being mindful of the person that is going through the experience and asking them, like,
Yeah.
are you looking for me to get down on the floor and cry with you? Or are you looking for a blanket and some hot tea?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so being able to clarify that is so powerful.
Yeah. And I was laughing as you were saying and smiling, because what you were saying reminded me of a time when I gave empathy when what was needed was compassion. And on the surface, it doesn't seem like it, but you'll see where I'm going with this. I came home from a day doing therapy. You had been with the kids all day, 5 kids. And by that point, your patience was exhausted. And you were not as gentle with them as you normally were, because you were just spent.
Right.
And I came in, saw the state that you were in, saw how they were acting, and I'm thought, well, I'm gonna back you up.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna come in and tell, and just like be as strong and as forceful with the kids as you were being, to defend you, right? And to put them in their place about what little, you weren't saying this, but I was saying what little brats they're being. And so I came in really hot. I came in as a defender to like shut these smart aleck know-it-all brats down and put them in their place because my queen's being mistreated. And it completely threw gas on the fire with them, and much to my surprise, with you.
Yeah.
I thought you'd be like, hell yeah, you tell them. And you were like, this is not what's needed. And I'm like, oh, I misread this situation. I remember you pulled me aside and you're like, when you've been gone all day and I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed, the last thing I need for you to do is to come in and be stressed and overwhelmed at the kids. Yes, they're misbehaving. They're also children who don't know how to navigate their emotions and whose brains are still developing. I need you coming off the bench, patient and calm and kind with them, to help get us all the way to bedtime.
Yeah.
And I was like, ew. I gave empathy. I matched what was going on with you. What was needed was compassion, where I care enough to get involved, but also to do what's going to make a difference and help. Now, what does this have to do with compassion fatigue? Well, it's not compassion fatigue, it's empathic distress.
Yeah.
You're distressed because your ability to be present is diminished. You're running on fumes. And it's oftentimes because you're feeling what they're feeling, or what they're feeling is causing you to feel something else. Our son the other day was very upset because he felt like he'd been mistreated. And because he got upset, the way he was talking was agitating me, and I got upset in a different way. Mm-hmm. When we talk about what's needed is compassion, not empathy, and that's how we don't burn out, this reminds me of the concept of differentiation.
And when you differentiate between what the person is experiencing and what you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to feel what they're feeling, and you don't need to be in the same place as they are. And you want to care enough to be involved, but detached enough that you're not getting lost in the sea of their emotions.
Yeah. And that's a form of self-compassion. Because curiously, the cure for empathic distress is compassion, not just for the other person, but also for yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been present and I've been feeling what others are feeling, and now I'm close to burning out. So I'm going to engage in self-care, but I'm also going to show myself compassion that it's okay for me to have limits. I don't need to feel guilty that I only have so much to give. And this is true whether it's cases like you're worn out from your kids complaining or falling down and then crying, all the way to first responders and police and fire and military who've been through such horrific, intense things that they feel like the problems of other people, it's hard to be there and be compassionate and empathetic for them because it's like this comparison point. And I think of Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, who went through the Holocaust and lost his family in the concentration camps, and he became a therapist. And if anybody could say, your problems aren't that big a deal, toughen up, you have no idea what suffering is, it's a Holocaust survivor. But he said, as a therapist, suffering is suffering. And in my mind, the only way he could get there was by having compassion for himself, which filled up his tank so he had enough to give to others. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the evolution of concepts and ideas and research, traditional therapy works to a point. But in some cases, it needs to evolve. In this video, Why Traditional Therapy is Failing, we explore what the next steps are for treatment to meet your needs for healing and hope. So click on the link below to watch it.
And until next time, remember to keep shining. We need your light.